Our first scripture reading comes from the Old Testament in the book of Psalms. You can follow along in your pew Bible on page 577. O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from far away. You search out my path and my lying down, and are acquainted with all my ways. Even before a word is on my tongue, O Lord, you know it completely. You hem me in behind and before, and lay your hand upon me. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me. It is so high that I cannot attain it. Where can I go from your spirit? Or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, you are there. If I take the wings of the morning and settle at the farthest limits of the sea, even there your hand shall lead me, and your right hand shall hold me fast. If I say, surely the darkness shall cover me, and the light around me become night, even the darkness is not dark to you. The night is as bright as the day, for darkness is as light to you. For it was you who formed my inward parts. You knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works that I know very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was being made in secret, intricately woven in the depths of the earth. Your eyes beheld my unformed substance. In your book were written all the days that were formed for me, when none of them as yet existed. How weighty to me are your thoughts, O God! How vast is the sum of them! I try to count them, and they are more than the sand. I come to the end, I am still with you. Oh, that you would kill the wicked, O God, and that the bloodthirsty would depart from me. Those who speak of you maliciously and lift themselves up against you for evil. Do I not hate those who hate you, O Lord? And do I not loathe those who rise up against you? I hate them with perfect hatred. I count them my enemies. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Test me and know my thoughts. See if there is any wicked way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting.
Paul wrote to the church in Corinth, who found themselves in a bit of a conflict. The church was splitting into two factions, and the young church was having trouble finding their way. Paul's letter, that we know as 1 Corinthians, was writing to guide, instruct, and correct this community. Hear now the writing of Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 13. I will be reading from the Message translation. If I speak with human eloquence and angelic ecstasy, but don't love, I am nothing but the creaking of a rusty gate. If I speak God's word with power, revealing all his mysteries and making everything plain as day, and if I have faith that says to a mountain, jump, and it jumps, but I don't love, I am nothing. If I give everything I own to the poor, and even go to the stake to be burned as a martyr, but I don't love, I've gotten nowhere. So, no matter what I say, what I believe, and what I do, I'm bankrupt without love. Love never gives up. Love cares more for others than for self. Love doesn't want what it doesn't have. Love doesn't strut, doesn't have a swelled head, doesn't force itself on others, isn't always me first, doesn't fly off the handle, doesn't keep score of the sins of others, doesn't reveal when others grovel, takes pleasure in the flowering of truth, puts up with anything, trusts God always looks for the best, never looks back, but keeps going to the end. Love never dies. Inspired speech will be over someday. Praying in tongues will end. Understanding will reach its limit. We know only a portion of the truth, and what we say about God is always incomplete. But when the complete arrives, our incompletes will be canceled. When I was an infant at my mother's breast, I gurgled and cooed like any infant. When I grew up, I left those infant ways for good. We don't yet see things clearly. We're squinting in a fog, peering through a mist. But it won't be long before the weather clears and the sun shines bright. We'll see it all then, see it all as clearly as God sees us, knowing him directly just as he knows us. But for right now, until that completeness, we have 3 things to do to lead us toward that consummation. Trust steadily in God, hope unswervingly, and love extravagantly. And the best of those 3 is love. The word of the Lord.
Good morning. My name is Madeline Cochrane, and this was my first year going on SMP. Woohoo! I want to share a little bit of my experience with you this morning, so here we go. Love. As one of the most common but powerful words in the English language, it is the word, emotion, and reason why SMP 2016 was such a physical and spiritual success on so many levels. SMP, in my mind, has always been held up on a form of a pedestal, as ever since my brother came back from his first trip in July of 2009. He was gushing about the work he accomplished, the people he met, the peanut butter and jelly sandwiches they had every day during lunch that hit the spot. It made me more than ecstatic to skip ahead to when I would be old enough to go on this trip and join such a special week. Due to ballet-related commitments that have consumed the entirety of my summers all throughout high school, this year was the year where I was finally able to make it happen, and boy, did it happen. Going in with little expectation, as I only had the vague memories of my brother's old stories, I didn't know what to expect. Sleeping on a floor with a few people I knew, a few people I didn't know, and on top of that, having a terrible cold going into the week, it didn't sound too glamorous. But I found that's exactly the beauty of it. The more dirt, the more sweat, the more lack of sleep there is, the more you feel you're giving your all to the week as a whole. The first day we arrived, we connected with another youth ministry of St. Mark's out of Charlottesville. That night, we had our first devotional, and we were introduced to the idea of consciously thinking about the role of love in our lives. For example, how we give and receive love, how we see love at work amongst relationships and actions, etc. In addition to what has now become one of my favorite passages of the Bible of all time, 1 Corinthians chapter 13, lucky 13. At the end of the first night, I watched God's presence at work and seeing how the people of St. Mark's and the rookies of the group, like me, had spontaneously assimilated into the group. People would double over in laughing, playing Egyptian Radsker, and engaged in meaningful conversation. That is love. The acceptance and loving welcome was incredible to see and feel. I already knew I was at home. This deep sense of belonging continued through the week as love expressed itself in many ways. The people of AmeriCorps welcomed Louisville and St. Mark's with open arms, and relationships were developed and ingrained. Some so deeply that one day, Teddy Baker over here, came up to me with a girl from the AmeriCorps staff and told me they were getting married. A fall wedding, I think. So save the date. I saw love in the long hours on the worksite, love in the nails being hammered into the roofs, love in the pained smiles of having to build the same shelf 3 times in a row because we just couldn't seem to get it right. I might have some personal experience with that. Love at night when teams were making dinner, and during cleanup when they were dancing and singing while washing countless dishes. Love in the members of the Church of Laurel that opened up their place of worship so that we could have a place to stay, and then cooking a homemade dinner for all 37 of us. By the end of the week, work had been done, games had been played, conversations had been had, and relationships had been developed, and all in the name of service. Amazing. As I was sitting on the beach our final night, I was still sick, slightly more tan, a lot more dirty, but I realized something. Not much is needed to find true inner happiness and peace. All you need is people that love and accept you genuinely and deeply, and a purpose, whether it be short-term, like building or attempting to build shelves, or long-term, like deepening relationships with people you just met or people you've known your entire life. I found all of this week, but most of all, I found love. From 1 Corinthians chapter 13, the passage that guided us through our journey in Delaware this week, I'd like to read a little portion of it. Love never gives up. Love cares more for others than for self. Love doesn't want what it doesn't have. Love doesn't strut, doesn't have a swelled head, doesn't force itself on others, isn't always me first, doesn't fly off the handle, doesn't keep score of the sin of others, doesn't revel when others grovel, takes pleasure in the flowering of truth, puts up with anything, trusts God always, always looks for the best, never looks back, but keeps on going to the end. Lewinsville, S&P, God, this week you showed me the truth in this passage of the Bible, and I am forever thankful. May we continue to know what love is and carry the memories and the mindset forward with us for the next 51 weeks of this year. I know I will. Thank you.
Good morning, and welcome everybody to Lewinsville on this holiday Sunday. Thank you for taking the time out of your days to be with us. As I'm sure you've already discovered, this service has been commandeered by the members of SMP, which is in its 27th year. I have been fortunate enough to participate in 5 of them. As I'm sure you've heard, this week we talked about love. By reading 1 Corinthians chapter 13, this passage was incredibly powerful to me. I've spent I've spent 2 years away from this trip due to the fact that my first 2 summers after college, I was in Colorado and California, and the logistics were simply too complicated to return. My life has gone through a roller coaster of up and down. A roller coaster of up and downs over the past 3 years as I've struggled to find my footing in college. I've been confronted by unforeseen obstacles that have stopped me in my tracks or pushed me onto a completely different path. Very specifically, over the past 4 months, I've been confronted by a situation that rocked me to my core, caused me to question myself and to question others in a way that I never have before. This time in my life looks completely different when it's placed next to the experience of SMP, and I think it comes down to love. During school, I went through a period where I felt an absence of love, and I've returned to a community of loving, hard workers who have shown me how love should be. As stated in 1 Corinthians, we showed that love never gives up as we worked our hardest every day, that love cares more for others than for self, by putting in hours into a house that is a hand up for people searching for a better life. While we may have wanted to sleep somewhere else other than a dining room floor, we learned that love does not want what it doesn't have, so we settled in and we worked with what we had. Love does not strut, it does not have a swelled head, it does not force itself onto others, it isn't always me first. This week was about teamwork, whether it be on the John site, from learning and teaching, not being afraid to ask a stupid question or 5 until you understand what you're meant to be doing. Love doesn't fly off the handle. It doesn't keep score of sins of others. It doesn't revel when others grovel. It takes pleasure in the flowering of truth. This week is so beautiful because people are free to be themselves, in whatever form that takes, because they are surrounded by a community of people who love them no matter what. A community that doesn't take count of sins or revel in the suffering of others. Love puts up with anything, trusts God always, always looks for the best, never looks back, but keeps going to the end. My hope, and I guess you could say my charge and benediction, for this group and also for this church, is that we always remember this week, that we go forth with this week in the corner of our minds and remember the incredible love that we have shared and experienced. Do not look back, but instead carry this with you in your minds and in your hearts. I'm not saying that I've figured anything out, that I am now enlightened after 1 week of fellowship and hard work and love, but I am saying that there is something about this week and these people that is special. The love and kindness that I experienced during this week has given me a stable mooring in an incredibly unstable time in my life. It has given me, and I hope it has given all of you, a figurative touchstone, something to reflect on, to return to in times of trial, a place, a time, a people that did and will continue to fill our lives with love. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Douglas Smith. I've been attending Lewinsville since graduating college in 1998, or for just about 18 years now. I was introduced to this church by my college roommate, Steve Trout, who many of you know, and who serves as a mainstay of these trips. I grew up in a Presbyterian church where Sunday school, followed by worship services, were the Sunday ritual. So the transition to life at Lewinsville was a seamless one. During college and shortly following graduation, I heard Steve, as well as many of my growing group of friends here, mention Summer Mission Project a number of times. However, it wasn't until I attended this return worship service following the Blitz build in 2000 that I got on board, and I haven't missed a trip since. This year marks my 16th time participating in Summer Mission Project. And while I've attended 16 trips, this is the first time I've stepped into the pulpit to share my reflections on the week. In just a handful of minutes, it's impossible to summarize what this week and what this church community has meant to me over the past 18 years, and especially over the course of the past 9 months. I read this 5 times this morning and I didn't cry, so I'm going to try to keep that up. As many of you are aware, my mom was diagnosed with esophageal cancer in October of last year. A mysterious loss of weight in the early part of the year turned into swallowing issues over the course of the summer. At no point did I anticipate anything serious being the source of the trouble, but doctors found a stage 3 tumor during an endoscopy and offered only a 30 to 40% chance that she would reach remission. After completion of a battery of tests run to assess the overall situation and devise a treatment plan, I began to share the news with my network of friends. The response from the Lewinsville community was incredible. The prayers, texts, calls, kind words, offers to talk about what was going on, offers to not talk about what was going on, and most importantly, the hugs served as such an incredible source of support for both me as well as my mom and dad. I often feel undeserving of the blessings that have been bestowed upon me thus far in life. Even given the difficulty of the situation, I was cognizant of how fortunate I was to have so many rooting for me and my parents. I'm excited to say that my mom was recently placed in remission following chemo and radiation treatment over the winter and a surgical procedure this past April. I have no doubt the prayers lifted up on her behalf by this community helped bring us to where we are today. I'm indebted to this congregation for the support you afforded me and my family. So, now, also, as many of you know, I grew up in Delaware, the site of this year's trip. The son of my childhood pastor is now the head of the Sussex County Habitat for Humanity chapter. So when the planning committee met to discuss possible locations for this year's trip, I offered to reach out and inquire about their availability. Given the size and skill level of our typical group, we can be tough to accommodate, but the Sussex County chapter jumped at the chance to host us. On Sunday of this past week, we were introduced to some of the Habitat and AmeriCorps staff who would be working with us for the week. We also learned of our work assignment, which was helping to develop a mixed-income neighborhood in Ellendale, Delaware. Ellendale is a small city, just a few hundred residents, but it sits 10 minutes south of the home that I grew up in and the house where my parents still live today. The neighborhood was only a stone's throw from the Southern Grill, which is where my dad goes for chicken and dumplings. So, on Thursday of the week, my parents made the short drive to the work site to visit with the group. They have long heard the stories of these trips. They've seen the pictures. They've read the blog posts and shared in my enjoyment of the week, but this offered them an opportunity to witness our work firsthand. It was a bit of a surreal moment. While my parents have attended worship at Lewinsville a handful of times and met many of you, the connection to those that supported them these past several months was largely through me. So seemingly wanting to give back to those that had supported her, my mom expressed an interest during a recent visit home in doing something for the team. Her initial suggestions were bottles of water or cupcakes. My obvious recommendation was cupcakes. We've got the water thing covered. As we broke for lunch, Mom and Dad unloaded about 40 or so cupcakes from the back of their car, and not just any cupcakes, but my favorite as a kid, chocolate with cream cheese and chocolate chips. As we ate, we shared hugs, stories, and smiles. To me, it almost felt like a bit of a celebration. Every SMP week is unique and special in its own way. I'll always remember this trip fondly, thanks to the opportunity I had to share this experience with my parents. I'll remember my mom sitting on the picnic bench, soaking up a few midday rays of sun. And I'll remember my dad walking around to offer the crew seconds of cupcakes. Given all that we've been through since October, I feel lucky to have had that opportunity. It's perhaps a bit cliche, but with another week in the books, I'm already looking forward to SMP 2017, to the laughter, the jokes, the work, but largely to give back even a small percentage of what I have received through this experience and from this church community. So this story serves as just one of the ways in which I've been blessed by the tradition of this mission project and to spending the week with these wonderful people. And perhaps I'll muster the courage to step back into the pulpit and share another before another 16 years have gone by. Thank you.